America's native banana you can't buy. Why pawpaws won't go big. America has a native banana that can taste like custard, mango, and vanilla. It grows in our own forests. It can hang on a tree in late summer like a secret dessert. And yet you almost never see it in a supermarket. Not because it is rare, because it is fragile. Once a pawpaw is ripe, you can have as little as 3 to 5 days before it turns so soft you can barely carry it. And there is one more twist people argue about quietly. Inside this beloved fruit family, scientists have found compounds that raise a real question about long-term high-dose use. So why won't pawpaws go big, and what are we not being told? The pawpaw is the largest edible fruit native to North America. It grows across much of the eastern United States, often in shady river bottoms and rich woods. Some people call it the wild banana because the flavor can feel tropical, even though the tree survives cold winters. If you are over 50, this story matters for 2 reasons. First, pawpaws are a perfect example of how modern food systems decide what you get to eat, not based on taste, not based on tradition, but based on shipping, bruising, and shelf life. Second, pawpaws sit right at the intersection of hope and caution. They are nutrient-dense, and people love them. But there is also a growing, often misunderstood debate about a compound called annonacin. By the end, you will understand why your grandparents might have known pawpaws, why your grocery store does not, and what the safest, smartest way to enjoy them may actually be. But to see how we got here, we have to go back to a time when fresh fruit meant something very different. In early America, pawpaws were not a novelty. They were a familiar, seasonal food. They show up in old writing and place names, and in the memories of people who grew up where pawpaws grew wild. Even the Lewis and Clark expedition recorded pawpaws as a real food on the trail. On the return journey in September of 1806, the men noted they could live on pawpaw fruit as they traveled toward the first settlement. Imagine that. A fruit so common and so filling, a crew on the edge of hunger wrote that they could live on this. And yet today, you can live your whole life in the pawpaw's range and never taste one. So what happened? Here is the first turning point. The pawpaw did not fail because people disliked it. It failed because the world changed around it. Modern produce is built on a simple promise: uniform fruit, predictable ripening, tough skins, and long storage. Apples can sit for weeks. Oranges travel across countries. Bananas are picked green, shipped, and ripened on command. Pawpaws refuse that system. A pawpaw is a climacteric fruit. That means it ripens fast once it starts. The texture changes quickly. The aroma blooms. The sugars rise. And then, very soon, the fruit turns soft. So soft that in post-harvest guides, you will see a warning that pawpaws can become too soft to handle within 3 to 5 days. If you are a grocer, that is not a fun fact. That is a business disaster. Now think about the path from a farm to a supermarket shelf. Picking, sorting, packing, loading, shipping, unloading, stocking, display. Then you, the shopper, take it home and hope it lasts. Pawpaws cannot survive that long chain without special handling. And for most stores, the demand is not high enough to justify building that special chain. But here is the part most people miss. The pawpaw is not just a fruit with a short shelf life. It is a fruit that bruises and collapses under pressure. So even if you could move it fast, you still have the problem of damage. One bad squeeze, one heavy box, one bumpy ride, and you lose the fruit. So the pawpaw became something else, a local treasure, a backyard fruit, a forager's prize, a festival fruit. And that is where the story could end. A charming explanation, too delicate for stores, the end. But it gets more interesting because people did try to change the pawpaw. In the late 20th century, a serious domestication effort took shape. A man named Neil Peterson began a large-scale breeding program in 1981 to develop improved pawpaw varieties. The goal was simple: better flavor, fewer seeds, higher yields, and fruit that could fit modern expectations. At the same time, Kentucky State University built one of the world's most important pawpaw research programs. They collected genetic material, ran variety trials, and studied propagation, orchard management, and post-harvest storage. In other words, pawpaws were no longer just wild, they were becoming a crop, and that should have been the moment pawpaws finally broke into the mainstream. So why didn't it happen? Because the real enemy was not the tree, it was time. Researchers measured how quickly pawpaws soften at room temperature. In older studies, you will see shelf life estimates of about 2 to 4 days at ambient conditions. Some extension guides describe 3 to 5 days for tree-ripened fruit at room temperature. That is not a window. That is a crack in the door. Cold storage can help, but it creates new problems. You can sometimes hold pawpaws in refrigeration for a limited period, but if cold storage is too long, pawpaws can lose their ability to ripen properly or show chilling injury. So the pawpaw becomes a puzzle with no easy answer. If you store it warm, it dies fast. If you store it cold too long, it may not ripen right. If you handle it roughly, it bruises. If you handle it gently, it costs more labor. And supermarkets are not built for fruit that requires patience and tenderness. Here is where the economics get brutal. A commercial fruit succeeds when it is predictable, when it can be shipped by the pallet, when it can sit under bright lights, when it can be touched and still look perfect. Pawpaws are the opposite. That is why, even today, many of the most reliable ways to buy pawpaw are not fresh fruit in the aisle. It is frozen pulp, puree, ice cream, baked goods, products where the fruit can be processed at peak ripeness and preserved. And that sounds like good news. But wait, because the story has a second conflict. One that changes how we talk about pawpaws, especially for older audiences. It is the neurotoxin question. Pawpaws are part of the Annonaceae family, the same broader family that includes some tropical fruits people may know, like soursop. Researchers studying neurodegenerative disease noticed something unusual in places where certain Annonaceae fruits were eaten heavily over long periods. They focused on compounds called acetogenins, and one of the most discussed is annonacin. In 2012, researchers reported that pawpaw fruit contains a high concentration of annonacin, and that annonacin was toxic to cortical neurons in laboratory studies. Another study measured annonacin and related compounds in pawpaw pulp using modern chemical methods. Now, take a breath, because this is where the internet often goes wrong. This does not mean that eating a pawpaw once in a while is a proven cause of Parkinson's or dementia. It does mean there is enough evidence to justify careful language, especially when people start selling concentrated supplements, extracts, or making daily pawpaw smoothies a lifestyle. The key issues are dose, frequency, and form. In normal eating, most people consume the ripe pulp, occasionally in season. They do not eat the seeds, they do not eat the skin, and they are not concentrating the compounds into capsules. But when you turn a plant into a supplement, the rules change. The dose can jump, the exposure can become chronic, and the risk conversation becomes real. Some scientific reviews of Annonacea-related products describe patients whose symptoms slowed when they stopped consuming these products. That kind of observation is not a final verdict, but it is a warning flag. So the honest takeaway is this: pawpaws are a wonderful seasonal fruit. They are also a fruit with a chemistry story we have not fully finished studying. And that chemistry story, whether you find it scary or simply interesting, adds a powerful reason why pawpaws have not become the next big, chemistry-driven health food pushed on every shelf. Because if you are a company trying to build a national brand, the last thing you want is a cloud of uncertainty, even if the science is still evolving. So pawpaws remain in a strange place, too delicate for the industrial produce machine, too niche for most distribution networks, and too complicated to market as a miracle food without backlash. But here is the twist. That may be exactly what makes pawpaws worth protecting. Pawpaws teach a lesson about what our food system rewards. It rewards durability over flavor. It rewards uniformity over diversity. It rewards fruits that can be shipped and stored, not fruits that demand you meet them where they live. In a way, the pawpaw is not failing. It is refusing. It is a fruit that insists on local time, on seasonal time, on human scale. That is why pawpaw culture looks the way it does today. Small orchards, enthusiast groups, research plots, festivals, foraging walks, people sharing locations like family secrets. And research continues, quietly, trying to solve the time problem. Scientists test coatings, packaging, and storage methods to stretch the window. Some studies suggest edible coatings can extend usable shelf life beyond the usual few days, depending on cultivar and conditions. That is promising, but it also reveals something else. Even if we extend shelf life, pawpaws may never behave like apples, and that is fine. The future of pawpaws might not be every supermarket in America. The future might be regional markets, farm stands, and frozen pulp supply chains. The kind of system that can handle a fruit at its best, without pretending it is something else. So what should you do with this story as a viewer? First, if you ever find pawpaws for sale, treat them like ripe peaches and soft avocados. Buy them when they are just starting to soften. Keep them cool. Plan to eat them soon, and do not squeeze them in the store like a grapefruit. Second, be cautious with extremes. Avoid the temptation to treat pawpaw as a daily supplement or a concentrated brain health hack. The research on annonacin is a reminder that natural and harmless are not the same word, and dosage matters. If you have neurological concerns or you take medications, talk with a qualified medical professional before using any concentrated plant products. Third, if you want pawpaws to survive, support the people doing the slow work. The breeders selecting better varieties, the researchers solving post-harvest problems, the small growers building local markets that do not require cross-country shipping. Because the pawpaw's biggest problem is not flavor. It is not demand, it is not even science. It is that we built a world where the fruits that belong here can disappear from our sight, simply because they cannot survive a truck ride and a week under fluorescent lights. And the saddest part is this. If a pawpaw does go big one day, it might not be because the fruit changed. It might be because we changed the system around it. A system that makes room for local crops, seasonal eating, and foods that are not designed for infinite storage. So the next time you hear someone say, "If it was good, it would be in stores," remember the pawpaw. Sometimes the best foods are not missing because they are bad. They are missing because they are too alive. If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories like this.